just like to take a moment to recognize what today is in this country. And, obviously it's Truth and Reconciliation Day. And I think it's a time for all of us to reflect and remember, our country's history and, continue to work on ourselves and, continue to reconcile with the Indigenous people, our brothers and sisters in this country, and, continue to make our country inclusive.
Very well said by the captain, Connor McDavid, at his media availability earlier on today. McDavid, one of many veterans who will be in the lineup tonight as the Edmonton Oilers are getting set to take on the Calgary Flames in NHL exhibition action. Hey, folks, welcome to Got Your Back, a Friday short shift edition on this, a day of truth and reconciliation. Connor McDavid saying that very well. Thought he handled that well, and certainly echoing those sentiments. So listen, after watching a Calgary Flames team dress most of their veterans the other night, Oilers are going to have a chance to get the bulk of their lineup in tonight. I was at morning skate earlier on today. That's where McDavid was speaking. I can tell you what we have for a lineup tonight for you, for the Oilers. Kane with McDavid and Yamamoto, Hyman with Draisaitl and Puljujarvi, Nugent, Hopkins, McLeod and Foegele, Esposito, Philp, and Griffith. On the back end for the Oilers, it'll be Nurse and Ceci, Kulak, Bouchard, Broberg, and Murray in the lineup. And then, yes, Jack Campbell will make his debut tonight for the Edmonton Oilers. He was leading stretch today, and Pickard will back him up as well. Listen, we're going to get to Jacob Chychrun and all of those rumors and that hearsay and Darren Dreger's reporting. We're going to get to that in a couple of minutes. But first, we remind you that Got Your Back short shifts proudly are brought to you by Mid-City Construction Management. It's a locally owned family company specializing in civil construction projects for over 40 years, from roadways to excavation, underground utilities, paving, and concrete. They have played a massive role in the infrastructure of Edmonton and the surrounding area since 1980. And by the way, they're looking for quality people right now. They're hiring. So if you're looking for work, go to mid-city.ca and click on Apply Now. That's mid-city.ca and click Apply Now. They're looking for people, all different qualifications, from equipment operators, groundspeople, concrete workers, snow removal. The full and part-time positions are available. So once again, thanks to Mid-City Construction Management for being title sponsors here of our Got Your Back short shifts. So what's going on with Jacob Chychrun, hey? Good old Dregsy banging some pots there on Insider Trading yesterday, reporting that the Oilers, one of a number of teams that have been in on the mix for the Arizona young defenseman. It's a tempting guy to go out and potentially get. Top 4 defenseman for sure. Got some skill, has scored some goals in the past. 2 years left on his deal. I think $4.6 million in that range. Really doable contract. And listen, there's been lots of trade talk surrounding Jacob Chychrun for quite some time now, and the Oilers' names has been brought up somewhat in the past. But what's real and what's not? Decided to go right to the man himself, Darren Dreger. Chatted with him a little bit earlier on today to talk about his reporting last night and to reiterate where things are at with Jacob Chychrun. Okay, so listen, I'll kind of lay this out for folks. You talked about Jacob Chychrun on Insider Trading. Yesterday, you listed a number of teams that might potentially be interested, be in the mix. The Edmonton Oilers were among them. There's some local reporting here out of Edmonton today. Mark Spector, our friend, suggesting that the Oilers, in fact, are not in on Jacob Chychrun in a meaningful way, that the asking price is too high, and that, basically it's a non-starter and that there aren't anything in the way of talks. So, listen, we're all friends here. Let's just get at what you know. The Edmonton Oilers and their interest in Jacob Chychrun. How would you expand on what you said on Insider Trading last night?
Yeah, look, I think Spec is accurate, and the language that he uses is precise, but it's bang on. The Oilers are not actively trying to trade for Jacob Chychrun, but you know what, Ryan, you could say that about the Toronto Maple, with the exception of Ottawa. I think Ottawa would take Jacob Chychrun tomorrow if they could land him, but that's not what was reported in Insider. And what was reported was the teams that have stayed relatively in constant communication with those close to this process, right? So it wasn't reported that Ken Holland is actively negotiating to try and acquire Jacob Chychrun. But put yourself in Kenny Holland's chair for a moment, or Cal Dubas, or any team that is going to find it real difficult to make that move. Don't you want to stay in there?
Yeah.
Isn't that your job, to make sure the lines of communication are open? What if Billy Armstrong from the Arizona Coyotes, likes a player in the Edmonton pool that, hey, Holland thinks, you know what, I can live with that. I can't live with the other pieces that he was asking for earlier in the process, but if this player or that prospect is all of a sudden now of interest to Arizona, okay, let's discuss this moving forward. That's why teams stay in the mix and stay connected to those involved in the process.
Yeah.
And that's what I.
Yeah, for sure, Dreg. So it would seem to me in a situation like that, conversations would have happened. Cards are on the table. Here's what we'd be willing to pay you. What are you asking? Obviously, there isn't a match, and the Oilers would have some serious cap gymnastics to do to try and do any sort of Jacob Chychrun trade. But staying in communication and checking in here and there, that doesn't mean that they're actively, in the middle of a volley and a salvo back and forth with offers and counter offers and such. It just sounds like the fulsome conversation has happened, and things can change. So let's say, and I don't want to wish anybody bad luck, so I'm not going to say any names. Let's say the Oilers suffer an injury in one of their top couple of spots at the same position that Jacob Chychrun plays. Well, now all of a sudden in an important season for the Oilers, maybe their willingness to throw in certain assets or wheel or deal, considering the window they're in, maybe that changes as well. So it kind of probably serves them well to stay up to speed on it, because you never know what can happen.
100%, Ryan. And I can tell you that, the asking price on Jake Chychrun is different today than it was at the draft or early in the offseason. At one point, Billy Armstrong and the Arizona Coyotes were looking for as many as 5 pieces, including 2 first-round draft picks, and they just couldn't get that. Again, lots of communication and tire kicking, but nobody was willing to pull the trigger on that. And every team, well, most of them anyway, would want and need a contract or contracts to go back to Arizona because of the cap restraints that Edmonton, that Toronto, that all of these clubs, St. Louis, are going to have to face. But then look at the list of teams that I presented, okay? And it did include Ottawa, Toronto, and Edmonton among the Canadian clubs. Well, if you're Jake Chychrun, would you not want to play for the Oilers? Of course you would. You wouldn't want to play for the Leafs? The Ottawa Senators appear like they're ready to turn a corner. So some of that is positioning from the player's side as well, right? I mean, he's been patient. He's been vocal in saying that, he's just not interested in another rebuild. Who blames him for that? But he's also trying to navigate a process as best he can.
Yeah.
So it's interest from these top clubs, Edmonton included. But as we've already established, nobody reported that there was active negotiation towards a trade in Edmonton or anyone else outside of maybe, again, the Ottawa Senators.
What's interesting about Chychrun, this is a pretty high-end defenseman that's potentially, that is available here, but he's got 2 years left on a really reasonable contract. Quite often, when it's these higher-end guys that are available, they're entering into the last year of their deal, and a thing that really becomes part of any negotiation is, what's his willingness to re-sign? Are you willing to give up the assets if you don't know if he's willing to re-sign? Well, the issue with Chychrun, and he's a couple years out, from making that decision, or at least a year out from making that decision. So if you're Bill Armstrong in Arizona, is there more value in doing a deal with Jacob Chychrun, kind of like Brad Treliving was able to do out of Calgary, when you have a list of teams that he'd be willing to sign with, and you can make that trade this time next year, and he can extend.
Yeah, or conversely, if you're a team that is pretty eager, is there more value in trying to make that deal now?
Yeah.
Right? Because then
you get 2 years out of him.
You get 2 years out of him. We're going to continue to talk about this until that trade happens, Ryan. You know that. And here's hoping it happens sooner than later. And there's a sense it could happen sooner or later with one of the clubs involved. Or, maybe it's a team like the Islanders that just come out of nowhere. How do you know? But there is value in getting the full 2 years as opposed to talking about this and not doing anything until the trade deadline. But the reason, aside from Jake Chychrun being a good NHL defenseman, is the value in return. That contract is superb. It is.
Yeah.
Now, if you're Edmonton or if you're Toronto, your need isn't as significant as Ottawa, as an example, because you look at what you've got on that side, and now you're going, okay, well, who is Chychrun bumping out from that position?
Yeah.
Is he on the power play? All of these things. So there's a myriad of considerations that are in play at this stage still.
Great stuff, Dregs. Appreciate you hopping on. I know you got to bounce. Thank you kindly, and we'll probably have you on a Got Your Back main episode at some point here in the near future, maybe this upcoming week. Cheers, pal.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right, that is TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger providing a bit of clarity on the situation with Jacob Chychrun and where things stand or don't stand, frankly, with the Edmonton Oilers. I think about when I think about the role that Jacob Chychrun could play within this organization if they were to decide to make that trade. I think back to Oscar Klefbom. Good, young, play-controlling defenseman, left side, under cost control. Remember how much they banked on Oscar Klefbom when he was young? They did a real nice deal with him, and they lost him out of the blue basically for nothing. Really unfortunate situation. We wish Klefbom the best. Shoulder injury ends his NHL career. That was devastating for the organization to lose a player that high end, basically without anything in return. They had to do some juking and jiving and, trying to replace basically their entire second pairing. Because if you remember, not long after, Adam Larson walked. So that was the Duncan Keith trade to fill some of those spaces. Brett Kulak brought in and re-signed now to help shore up that left side. But Jacob Chychrun, young, left shot defenseman, plays in your top four, cost controlled. Basically, that's filling in the spot that was vacated by Oscar Klefbom and really put this organization back quite a ways as far as their left side goes on the blue line. So I understand Dylan Holloway would be a heavy price to pay. Philip Broberg, who is a left shot defenseman in the making, depending on how good you think he can be, how long until he can be a top four left shot defenseman? And you've got him controlled for a long time, much longer than 2 years. I think Ken Holland is right to stand pat and not be willing to move either of the organization's top two assets as far as youth goes in a deal in exchange for Jacob Chychrun. But at the same time, this team's in its window. This team wants to compete. And there is going to come a point in time where they have to add, and it's going to hurt to make that addition. Just how much you're willing to let it hurt, that's up to Ken Holland to try and figure out. But it'll be interesting for the rest of us to watch. He's done a good job of compiling assets, right? They've made their first-round picks. They haven't traded a lot of them away. Andreas Athanasiou, that trade was where Ken Holland got aggressive early in his tenure, and he got bit. A couple second-round picks hurt them. Well, he's been much more conservative with futures, and in particular first-round picks, and as a result, the organization is nicely stocked. Part of the beauty of being nicely stocked is when the opportunity presents itself to improve yourself, boom, you can strike, because the cupboards are stocked. But he's going to be careful about it, no question. Also needs to be noted that there would be a financial element with any Jacob Chychrun trade where a contract would have to go back the other way. That would have to clear up the cap space. So not necessarily just trading futures for Chychrun, but there would be a more complex hockey and cap deal as part of that as well. All right, that's going to wrap up this Got Your Back short shift, courtesy our good friends at Mid-City Construction. Oilers in action tonight against the Calgary Flames. Calgary sending, I think, much less experienced roster to Edmonton. The Oilers are dressing most of the big guns tonight. Connor McDavid will be back on ice. Leon Draisaitl. By the way, how about Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Draisaitl all being on separate lines to get going here tonight? I'm not saying that's how they're going to start the season, but certainly notable. Jesse Puljujarvi getting a look in the top six, which bumps Nugent Hopkins down to the McLeod line. And I think Nugent Hopkins scheduled to play wing tonight. So it will be interesting to see how that three-line configuration goes. But it's just exhibition, folks. We're not going to read too much into it. A reminder that Mid-City Construction is looking for people, all levels of qualifications. If you need a job, give them a call or go to mid-city.ca and click on Apply Now. They're looking for quality people, all different levels of qualifications. Equipment operators, they're looking for snow removal. Full and part-time positions are available. And there is plenty of room for growth at a great local company that is Mid-City Construction Management Inc. And a big thanks to them for being our title sponsor. Enjoy the game tonight, folks. We will check in on Got Your Back this upcoming week. Thank you so much for your downloads and your subscriptions. I hope you have a fantastic Friday. Cheers.